My name's Ryan. I'm 36 and I live in Austin, Texas. I work in cybersecurity, senior threat analyst for a large finance company. It's one of those jobs where the work never really ends. There's always something in the system that needs patching, always some new breach somewhere else in the world that we need to learn from. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and over the years, it's given me some peace of mind knowing I could provide for my wife, Haley. We've been together almost 11 years. Married for 8. Most people describe relationships in phases: honeymoon, stability, chaos, rebuilding. I always thought Haley and I had skipped the chaos part. We weren't perfect, but we clicked. The kind of click that makes you stop believing in soulmates because you start thinking, this right here must be as close as it gets. She's a yoga instructor. Teaches at a few studios around town, does retreats once or twice a year in Colorado or Sedona. She's into wellness, breathwork, meditation, journaling, vegan everything. If I'm being honest, sometimes I rolled my eyes at it, but she had this light in her. Like even if I didn't get it, it worked for her. She brought calm into my life. I brought stability into hers. At least, that's what I thought. About a month ago, 3 days before my birthday, my afternoon meeting got canceled. I remember it clearly. It was a Tuesday. I just wrapped up a security audit, and instead of diving into more reports, I thought, you know what? I'll head home early. Surprise Haley. Pick up those pastries she loves, the almond croissants with the flaked tops from Sweet Crumb near her studio. Grab her that oat milk latte she swears tastes different from everywhere else. I had it all planned. I even sent her a message in the morning, something cheesy like, hope your day's filled with good vibes and deep breaths. She responded with a heart emoji. Nothing unusual. I parked a little down the block because our driveway's too tight when both cars are in it. As I walked up the path to the house, I remember feeling that small flicker of satisfaction you get when you know you're about to make someone you love smile. It was warm out, one of those bright, dry Austin afternoons, and I remember thinking maybe we'd sit on the back patio together for a bit. Just talk. When I opened the front door, the first thing I noticed was that it was quiet, too quiet. No music, no podcast playing on the speaker, none of the usual hum that followed Haley around the house. I stepped inside, holding the paper bag of pastries and the drink carrier, expecting maybe she was napping on the couch or in the middle of a session. But she wasn't alone. There was a man sitting on the far side of the living room, barefoot. His shoes, leather sandals, were neatly tucked by the door. He looked like he was in his early to mid-40s, salt and pepper hair slicked back in that effortlessly disheveled way. He was wearing a loose, natural fiber shirt, something linen, off-white, and a pair of yoga pants. Not sweatpants. Not gym shorts. Yoga pants. The expensive kind. They were sitting close. Her body was angled toward his, knees nearly touching. And her hand was resting lightly on his knee. She pulled it back the second she saw me. He jerked upright like he'd been caught shoplifting and muttered something like, I should go, without even looking at me. I was still holding the coffee. Haley stood up quickly, smoothing her top, her voice steady but rehearsed. That's Ben, she said. My breathwork coach. We were doing a session earlier. We were just talking through some emotional release. I blinked, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Emotional release? I asked, not even sure I meant to say it out loud. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable. Ryan, come on. You know how much stress I've been under lately. With the retreat planning, the studio drama, all of it. She waved a hand like that explained everything. Ben's been helping me find some clarity. Her tone changed, tightened. She crossed her arms. And can we not make this a thing? You're always imagining things. You don't trust anyone. It's exhausting. I hadn't even raised my voice. I hadn't asked anything accusatory. But somehow I was already being accused. I'm not imagining anything, I said quietly. She let out this breath sharp, annoyed. Then don't start, okay? He was just leaving. Ben didn't say a word. Just grabbed his bag, a canvas tote, and slipped out the door. I watched her walk into the kitchen, open the fridge like nothing had happened. Like some barefoot guy hadn't just been sitting inches away from her in the middle of our living room in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon like he belonged there. I didn't say much after that. I didn't trust myself to. I set the pastries on the counter, quietly tossed the now cold coffee in the sink, and went upstairs under the excuse of checking work emails. But the image of her hand on his knee, it was burned into my brain. Not just the physical part, but the way it looked casual. Like it wasn't the first time. Like comfort had already been established. And it hit me, this wasn't just a weird moment. This was the moment I entered the story halfway through. I laid down on our bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her move around the kitchen, humming to herself like everything was normal. But everything had just shifted and I knew it. I didn't know what was going on exactly, but I felt it like a change in pressure before a storm. You can't always name it, but your skin knows. That night, I didn't bring it up. I didn't ask her about Ben again. I didn't accuse her of anything. Part of me still wanted to believe I was overreacting, that I was misreading things. Maybe he really was just some granola coach helping her breathe through a rough patch. But another part of me, the part that had sat through thousands of hours of training, of pattern recognition and subtle anomaly detection, kept whispering in my ear. This is not nothing. I've spent my career learning how to detect breaches, quiet, hidden entry points that people miss because they trust their systems too much. Turns out I didn't know the first thing about what that looked like in a marriage. That night, I barely slept. I laid beside Haley in bed, both of us facing opposite walls, maybe 2 feet apart but emotionally in different zip codes. I could hear her soft breathing, that slight snore she sometimes made when she was overly tired. For years, it was comforting. Now it sounded foreign. Like I was lying next to a stranger who just happened to wear my wife's face. The thing is, you don't fall out of trust in a single second. Not really. It unravels. Slowly. Like a fraying thread you didn't notice until half the sweater is gone. That moment with Ben had cracked something, sure. But the more I lay there thinking, the more I realized the crack didn't come out of nowhere. It had roots, small red flags I'd brushed aside because they didn't seem worth arguing about. But once your lens changes, everything looks different. Like how she'd started leaving for yoga earlier. First it was 15 minutes, then 30. Then 2 full hours before class. I like to journal beforehand, she'd said once. Get grounded. That seemed harmless. Except now I couldn't help wondering what or who she was grounding herself with. Then there was the makeup. She'd never been into expensive brands. She used simple, natural stuff. But over the last few months I started noticing Sephora bags tucked behind the coats in the closet. A couple hundred here, another 100 there. Lipsticks and primers I'd never seen her wear around me. One time I made a light joke about it. Who's all this war paint for? She smiled but didn't answer. At the time I thought maybe she just liked treating herself. Now, I wasn't so sure. A couple weeks before the Ben incident I found a receipt in her car. It had slid halfway under the passenger seat, almost like it was trying to hide itself. It was from a trendy downtown restaurant, Pier 9. We'd never been there together. The bill was for 2 entrees, a glass of wine, and dessert. I asked her about it later, casually. She blinked, then said, "Oh yeah, that was lunch with a friend." I asked which one. She hesitated a moment too long before saying, "You don't know her." I let it go. That's the part that bothers me the most now, not the receipt itself, but how easy it was to let it slide. I'd already started teaching myself not to question her, not to look too hard. And then there was her phone. It was subtle at first. She started putting it on silent more often, claiming she just needed quiet time. Fine, I get that. But then she started taking it into the bathroom. Every time. Even for a quick shower. And when I asked, half teasing, half curious, she said she liked listening to guided meditations while she washed her hair. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But then there was the night I caught her downstairs at 2:30 a.m. I'd woken up thirsty and went to get a glass of water. I figured she'd be asleep beside me, but the sheets were cold. I walked down the hallway and there she was in the living room, curled up on the couch, furiously typing on her phone. The only light was from the screen. She jumped when she saw me, turning the phone away from my line of sight. "What are you doing?" I asked. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. "It's for the community center," she said. "A volunteer group message. One of the organizers is on a different time zone. Go back to bed, Ryan." I nodded. Walked back upstairs. But in the dark, I felt something knot inside me. Not rage. Not suspicion. Just quiet, creeping dread. Like I was in a room where something toxic had been leaking for weeks and I'd only just started to smell it. From that point on, I started noticing even more little things. Too many to ignore. She used to leave her laptop open on the kitchen table when she worked on yoga playlists or retreat schedules. Lately, she closed it every time she stepped away. Locked it even. Her iPad, same thing. Suddenly password protected. Not like her at all. She stopped talking about her day. I'd ask how her classes went and she'd give me these vague answers. Good, busy, the usual. No stories. No names. Just fog. One afternoon I came home early again, just coincidence this time. Her car was in the driveway, but when I walked inside, the house was silent. I figured maybe she was napping. But her keys were on the hallway table and her purse was open on the counter, phone missing. I walked upstairs and found the bathroom door locked. I knocked gently. No answer at first. Then she said, "Just a second." Her voice was cheerful. Too cheerful. When she opened the door, her hair was damp and she was wrapped in a towel. I noticed her phone tucked into the towel folds. She laughed when she saw me looking. "I was watching a skincare tutorial in the bath," she said. "You scared me." I smiled, pretending I believed her. But I wasn't even pretending anymore, not deep down. It was like trying to hold water in your hands and feeling it constantly slip through the cracks in your fingers. You can pretend you're still holding it, but eventually there's nothing left but damp palms and an aching sense of loss. We started communicating through avoidance. She was busy. I was tired. She was stressed. I was distracted. Our conversations became logistical. "Don't forget the vet appointment. Did you pay the gas bill? What time is your Zoom meeting?" Like we were roommates who barely tolerated each other's schedules. But underneath the routine, I could feel this quiet war brewing. And then came my birthday. She gave me a watch, nice, expensive, unnecessary. I looked at her when I opened it, expecting a kiss, maybe a joke about how I was getting old. Instead, she said something that's still ringing in my ears weeks later. "You've earned a day to yourself." I blinked. "What?" "I mean it," she said. "Go for a drive. Do something for you. Reflect. And honestly, I need a little time alone too. Just to breathe. Don't take it personally." I couldn't even respond. My birthday. And she wanted to spend it apart. "This way we both get what we need," she added. Space. Clarity. I nodded slowly, but the knot in my chest twisted tighter. Later that night, as I was sipping a beer and watching the rain start to fall outside the garage, I got a text. It was from my cousin Trevor. Trevor's a good guy. He works part-time at a hotel complex out near the lake, Lakeview Suites and Spa. Fancy spot. Weekend getaway kind of place. The message was simple. "Your wife's at Lakeview Spa Suite. Not alone." I stared at it for a full minute before I even blinked. Trevor didn't know the details. He just recognized Haley in the lobby with a man. They were holding hands. Laughing. Checking in. I didn't call. I didn't scream. I just stood up, grabbed my keys, and left the house. And somewhere between our front door and the hotel, something in me went numb. I didn't want answers anymore. I just wanted to know how deep the damage went. I barely remember the drive. It was about 30 minutes from our place to Lakeview, but it could have been 3 or 50. Time did something strange during that drive, bent, stretched, collapsed. The world outside the windshield blurred past me in streaks of gray, headlights, and distant pine. All I could think about was that message from Trevor, like it was carved into my skull. She's not alone. At one point, I pulled over at a gas station just to stare at my reflection in the driver's side window. I looked like I'd seen a ghost. Or like I was about to become one. Pale, jaw clenched, eyes like they were waiting for impact. I didn't call Haley. Didn't text her. There was nothing to say, not yet. I didn't want to hear some last-minute excuse, didn't want to give her time to delete messages or change clothes or rehearse whatever speech she might give when she realized the curtain had dropped. When I finally turned off the main road and into the Lakeview parking lot, I felt like I was floating above myself, watching a version of Ryan I didn't recognize anymore. A quieter man. A colder one. Lakeview was one of those rustic luxury places, stone and with aesthetic fairy lights strung across walkways, a fire pit glowing near the entrance where couples in robes drank wine and whispered to each other. I parked near the side entrance where the massage center had a wall of glass overlooking the lake. That's where I saw her. Haley. My wife. She was sitting in a lounge chair, wrapped in a white robe, her hair damp and pulled up in a bun. Her face was flushed like she'd just come from the steam room. She was laughing. Not the forced chuckle she gave me during awkward dinners lately. This was that real, familiar laugh, the one that crinkled her eyes. And across from her, facing her, smiling like he'd won the lottery, was Ben. Same guy. Same linen vibe. His robe loosely tied, one leg crossed over the other like he owned the moment. He reached out and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear. She didn't pull away. In fact, she leaned toward him slightly, resting her chin on her hand like a teenager in love. Then he reached out and softly touched her neck, his thumb resting just below her jaw like it was the most natural gesture in the world. It was soft. An asterisk mate. Familiar. Too familiar. They weren't kissing. They didn't need to be. You know a couple when you see one. And in that moment, I wasn't part of it. I stood there, maybe 20 yards away, hidden in the dark beside a tree. I could have walked in. Could have made a scene. But I didn't. Not because I was scared. Because I was done. That was the moment the truth settled. Not the suspicion, not the doubt, not the nagging gut feeling that's easy to suppress when you love someone. This was clarity. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't emotional support. This wasn't breathwork or boundaries or spiritual connection or stress relief. This was cheating. This was betrayal with full eye contact. This was my wife building a new world where I wasn't invited. I stood there for a long time, letting it sink in, letting it burn. Eventually, I turned around and walked back to my car. Got in. Sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and my hands trembling. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the steering wheel like they do in movies. I just stared ahead, breathing. Like maybe if I focused hard enough, I could inhale everything I'd just seen and exhale something resembling control. When I got home, it was close to midnight. The house was quiet as always. Cold. I walked into our bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer, and pulled out the envelope with the plane tickets to Seattle. The ones I bought for Haley's birthday 2 months in advance, non-refundable. She always said she wanted to see the Sound, do the ferry ride, eat fresh seafood on the pier. I'd spent weeks planning it. I set them on her side of the bed. Next to them, I placed a note. Nothing dramatic. Just a single sentence printed in my cleanest handwriting. You wanted to be alone. Now you are truly. I stared at the note for a long time. And then I packed a small bag, grabbed my laptop, and left. No yelling. No confrontation. Just silence, the kind that says more than rage ever could. I crashed on my buddy Liam's couch that night. He didn't ask questions. Just handed me a beer and turned on the TV like nothing was unusual. That kind of quiet friendship you only get with someone you've known since college. The next morning, my phone was full, 10 missed calls, 5 texts, 2 voicemails. Haley, where are you? Please answer. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was just overwhelmed. We need to talk. Please don't do anything stupid. I didn't answer. I turned the phone off and dropped it in a drawer. It was strange how quiet my head was. Not peaceful, but still. Like the calm right after a building collapses. I stayed with Liam for 2 nights. On the 3rd day, I went back home to get a few things, some clothes, files for work, my acoustic guitar I hadn't touched in a year. Haley was there. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe defiance. Maybe tears. What I saw was something in between. She looked small. Pale. Her eyes were red, her hair still damp from a shower. She had the look of someone who hadn't slept, which frankly made 2 of us. When I walked in, she didn't say hello. Just stood in the living room holding a mug of tea with both hands like it was the only thing anchoring her to the floor. Ryan, she said. Can we talk? I walked past her toward the stairs. I'm just here to grab some stuff. Please, she said again, stepping toward me. You don't know the full story. I paused, looked at her. I don't need the full story. I saw enough. Tears welled up instantly. It's not what it looks like. God. That line. The oldest, weakest shield in the world. I shook my head. Don't insult both of us. She started crying, quietly at first, then more openly. I messed up, she said. But it's not what you think it is. Haley, I said calmly. I saw you touch his face. I saw the way you looked at him. That doesn't happen overnight. That happens when there's history. She didn't deny it. That was the part that made it real. She didn't say we're just friends. She didn't say it was a mistake. She just stood there, weeping into her mug like she wanted me to feel bad for her. I didn't. I couldn't. There's something in you that breaks when you realize the person you built your life around isn't in the same blueprint anymore. I walked upstairs. Grabbed what I came for. And as I zipped up my bag, I looked around our bedroom, our bed, our pictures, the sweater she always stole from my drawer. It all looked hollow now. Stage props in a play that was ending without an encore. Before I left, I turned to her one last time. I won't yell, I said. I won't fight. I just want peace. So if there's anything you need to say, put it in writing. Otherwise, we're done talking. She didn't try to stop me. Maybe because she knew I was serious. Maybe because part of her had already accepted it. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove. And this time, I didn't look back. The following Friday, I came home early again, but this time, it wasn't by chance. I left the office around 2:30 p.m. and didn't tell anyone. No text to Hannah. No heads up. I didn't want to give her time to prepare. I just needed to see what was real and what was in my head. I told myself maybe I was being paranoid, obsessive, losing grip. But deep down, I knew exactly what I was walking into. As I pulled up to our street, I didn't park in the driveway. I turned off the engine and coasted silently to the curb a few houses down. My heart was pounding, that kind of thud you feel behind your ears. I couldn't believe what I was doing, sneaking around my own home like a private investigator. But it didn't feel like mine anymore. Not really. As I walked up the sidewalk, I kept to the fence line, moving slow, watching for anything. The blinds were drawn, tighter than usual. But when I got close to the front door, I saw something. Just a flicker. The curtain in our bedroom window twitched. Not like it was caught in a breeze. Like someone had just peeked out and ducked. My body locked up. I stood there for a moment, barely breathing. Then I reached for my keys, quietly unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The house was still. Too still. The kitchen was spotless, no music, no signs of anyone. But I could hear something faint upstairs. Muffled. Music, maybe? A playlist? Then a laugh. A man's voice. Distant but unmistakable. I moved toward the stairs, each step deliberately slow. I felt like I was walking through quicksand. The weight in my chest made it hard to move, harder to breathe. I reached the top and paused at the landing. The bedroom door was ajar. I wish I could say I hesitated, that I thought about walking away. But I didn't. I pushed the door open just a few inches and looked inside. What I saw didn't hit me all at once. It was like a slow-motion impact. Zach was standing near the dresser, towel around his waist, hair damp like he'd just stepped out of the shower. His shirt, one of mine, I realized was slung over the chair near our desk. Hannah was sitting on the edge of the bed, her legs crossed, wearing the black lace set I'd seen once but never on her. And when she turned her head and saw me, her expression didn't twist in horror. She didn't gasp. She didn't even stand. She just blinked. Like I'd interrupted a conversation. Zach looked stunned. Pale. Like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't say a word. I walked in, grabbed the first thing within reach, my laptop from the nightstand, and hurled it at him. Not even aiming. Just acting. It missed by a foot, smashed into the closet door, cracked the edge. He flinched, stumbled backward, still in socks and towel, fumbling for something to cover himself. Tom, wait, he stammered, but I was already opening the balcony door. Out, I said. What? Get out. Now. He hesitated and I shoved him. Hard. He stumbled onto the balcony, tried to turn around, and I gave him one last push. He tripped over the threshold, landing in the flower bed below like a sack of laundry. I didn't even look to see if he was okay. I didn't care. I turned back around. And that's when I saw her. Still sitting there. No tears. No panic. Just wide-eyed. Staring at me like I was the one who broke something. You're the one who ruined this, she said. Her voice wasn't shaking. She didn't even look embarrassed. My vision blurred. Not from tears, from rage, confusion, heartbreak all colliding in my chest like a car crash. I ruined this? I said, stunned. Are you serious? She stood up slowly like it was a business meeting we were wrapping up. Like she wasn't still in lingerie, standing in the middle of our bedroom, in the middle of a life we built together. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, not meeting my eyes. I felt like we were strangers. I felt invisible. I laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was hollow, bitter, dry. And sleeping with him fixed that? Her silence was louder than any answer she could have given me. I walked over to the dresser, grabbed the first drawer handle, yanked it open. Pulled out Zach's shirt. His watch. A deodorant stick. You let him keep stuff here? She stayed quiet. You gave him a drawer? Still nothing. I looked down at the shirt, then tossed it onto the floor like it was contaminated. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw every piece of furniture out the window. But instead, I walked back into the hallway, down the stairs, and into the garage. I found a garbage bag. One of those thick black ones we keep for yard work. I went back upstairs. She hadn't moved. I stuffed Zach's shirt into the bag. Then his socks. Then the deodorant. His charger. Anything that didn't belong to me or her went in. The whole time, she just stood there like she was watching someone else's life fall apart. I tied the bag, walked to the balcony, and hurled it off the edge. It landed right next to him, still catching his breath in the dirt. Here, I said, loud enough for him to hear. You forgot your stuff. I closed the door. When I came back inside, she was sitting again. Head in her hands. I didn't want to hurt you, she mumbled. Too late, I said. And I meant it. You always think the big moments in life will come with noise, yelling, slammed doors, fireworks. But when I ended my marriage, it didn't sound like anything. Just the soft click of the front door behind me and then the hum of my car as I pulled away. That night, I didn't go to Liam's. I needed something quieter, even more removed. I checked into a cheap hotel just off I-35. One of those places with vending machines in the lobby and carpets that smell like detergent and despair. But it was quiet. I needed quiet. I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress with the TV off, just holding my phone, scrolling through the texts from Haley I hadn't answered. She'd stopped calling that morning. No more messages since noon. I guess she finally understood the silence wasn't temporary. She hadn't responded to the plane tickets or the note I left. Or maybe she had, just not in a way I could see. I stayed in that hotel for 2 nights. I told work I was taking personal time. My boss, Jenna, didn't press. She knew something was off. Probably assumed someone died. And she wasn't wrong. It just wasn't the kind of death that comes with flowers and casseroles. On the second day, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney. Her name was Elaine Monroe. 45, sharp as hell, and direct in a way that felt oddly comforting. She'd probably seen hundreds of guys like me, shell-shocked, quiet, too tired to be angry. "You've got a clean case," she said after hearing the basics. "If you've got proof, text messages, photos, anything that establishes an affair, we can move this quickly." "I saw them together," I said. "That helps," she nodded. "Anything in writing?" I hesitated, then remembered Haley's tablet. I hadn't looked through it, hadn't wanted to become that guy who snoops through his wife's devices. But I wasn't her husband anymore. That line had already been crossed by her. Elaine gave me a list of things to gather: bank info, titles, statements. She also suggested freezing access to joint accounts until we figured out what was fair. She wasn't emotional about it. She was efficient. That helped. Emotion hadn't served me in a long time. That night, I went back to the house. I let myself in around 9 p.m. I half expected the locks to be changed. They weren't. Haley was sitting at the kitchen table, barefoot, wrapped in an old hoodie of mine. It made me angry. Not in the yelling sense. Just a quiet, tightening anger. She looked up when I came in, but didn't speak. I walked past her without saying a word and went straight to the bedroom. The tablet was in the drawer of her nightstand under a sleep mask and some lavender spray. I powered it on. To her credit, or maybe just her carelessness, it wasn't locked. There was a folder on the home screen labeled Retreats. Inside were dozens of photos. And there he was. Ben. In Sedona. In Santa Fe. In some forest cabin I didn't recognize. Pictures of him and Haley under dream catchers. Sitting on a blanket at sunset. Her head on his shoulder. His lips on her forehead. Them walking hand in hand down some dirt trail. There were captions on a few little affirmations she'd written beneath them. "Healing with you feels like home. Grateful for this energy. 2 souls, 1 breath." I stopped scrolling. I'd seen enough. It wasn't just infidelity. It was an asterisk Macy. Connection. She hadn't been having a fling, she'd been building a second life, 1 breathwork session at a time. I stood up, grabbed the tablet and carried it downstairs. She looked up again when I re-entered the kitchen. "Can we talk?" she asked. I placed the tablet on the counter and slid it toward her. Her eyes dropped to the screen, still open to a photo of her and Ben in a hammock. Her breath caught. "I didn't mean for it to happen like that," she whispered. I almost laughed. "How did you mean for it to happen?" "I was lonely," she said. "I felt like you were always working. I needed something. I don't know, lighter. More connected." "You didn't want light," I said. "You wanted someone new. You just didn't want to be the bad guy about it." She went quiet. No more tears this time. No dramatic apologies. Just silence. And honestly, I appreciated it. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, I opened a new account under my name and moved all my money out of our joint savings. I left just enough for her to pay rent for a month if she needed to. I wasn't trying to leave her destitute, I just wasn't going to fund her fresh start with someone else. I closed her access to my cards. Removed her as an authorized user. I texted her to let her know and she didn't respond. A couple days later, I got a call from my sister. Apparently Haley had reached out to her, crying, saying she didn't know how to fix things, that she still loved me, that she was confused. My sister didn't give her much. "She made her choices," Rachel said. I told her that. You don't get to build 2 lives and then act shocked when one of them burns down. I got letters after that. 3 of them. Handwritten. Folded neatly. Full of emotional acrobatics, regret, nostalgia, little memories she knew would land like knives. "Remember when we danced barefoot in the kitchen? Remember our anniversary in the cabin? You always made me feel safe. I never stopped loving you." I didn't reply. Not because I hated her. Because I finally understood that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is nothing. No response. No argument. No plea. Just distance. She sent one more message 2 weeks later. A text. "I didn't think I'd lose everything in one night. I just wanted some air. Please talk to me." But that's how it started, didn't it? She wanted air. Space. Breathwork. Room to find herself. She just didn't expect to end up truly alone.